No countdown today. No countdown today. Um, we're gonna talk about 2026 right quick, and let's explain why. The reason why some of you need to focus on 2026 is because a few of your 2025 goals are long term. They're not gonna happen this year, and because they're not gonna happen this year, you're probably well. First of all, you may not be aware of it. Um, it can be due to experience. It can be due to unforeseen circumstances. A lot of things as to why your 2025 goals, not all of them, but some of them, aren't going to necessarily come to fruition or be met this year. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want this to have you spiral into overthinking. Uh, which goals do I need to prioritize? Or at the end of the day, you still need to get stuff done, right? I think a few streams ago, we talked about the difference between those who are high achievers and overachievers. Very similar to overachievers are overthinkers. The only difference is overachievers over execute and overthinkers don't really execute at all. But there's this fine line. If I'm not careful, I can fall into this trap too. There's this fine line of individuals, of people who they can overthink and overachieve. It's like what they're processing things out loud while they're thinking. And a lot of people, if they don't know them, may think that all they do is just kind of pontificate. But if they know the individual, not only are their thoughts kind of invading, but they're also acting as well. They're getting they're getting shit done. And because of that, what end up happening is this, I can't even call it a duality. It's both sides of the same coin, uh, which can cause anxiety. I think the root, as we're talking this out, as we're talking through this live, I think the root of what an overthinker and an overachiever have in common, or the golden thread between the two. Maybe it's not even golden because golden may typically mean something that's prized. I wouldn't call this golden at all. I'd say it's anxiety. The anxiety of what comes when you have to make certain decisions, and the anxiety of if certain things don't get done, which is why people over deliver consistently to the point of burnout. What happens if they don't deliver in a particular way? So we got anxiety at the root here. Um, I made a quick little chart though about the differences between overthinkers and high achievers. So similar to a chart that I made with high achievers and overachievers. So when it comes to mindset, high achievers are action oriented. They're ready to learn from their mistakes, but overthinkers are risk averse. They fear of making mistakes, um, and that can cause paralysis. We typically call that analysis paralysis. When it comes to goal setting, high achievers set clear goals and timelines, and overthinkers might set goals, but they get bogged down in the details of the what ifs. Overthinkers are really good at setting goals as well, but man, do they overdo the nuances of what that goal should entail. When it comes to decision making, I think this is the focus right here. This is the linchpin is decision making. Of course, action is as well, but high achievers make timely decisions with the available info, while overthinkers delay decisions due to constant re-evaluation. Listen, if you're an overthinker and an overachiever, you're crazy. Now, I used to work in the behavioral health space, so I can understand the stigma that comes with saying the word crazy. But you're crazy. I say that because I've been in that. I've been in that chasm. It's like the abyss of doing the most and thinking the most at the same time. It's craziness. When it comes to focus, high achievers prioritize essential tasks for maximum impact, while overthinkers they focus too much on minor details and losing sight of the big picture. When it comes to approach to challenges, high achievers view challenges as learning opportunities, while overthinkers see challenges as potential pitfalls leading to anxiety. Remember, I told y'all that the linchpin, well, not the linchpin, I already used that word. The common thread between overthinkers and overachievers is anxiety. When it comes to time management, high achievers are structured in their scheduling and their daily, weekly targets, while overthinkers struggle to allocate time effectively due to continual analysis. High achievers, when it comes to self confident, have self belief that's reinforced by the progress and the feedback that they get. Remember, they already have the self belief, but then it is fortified by what progress? That means that they're acting, right? Action. And because of the action and then the feedback that they're getting and the movement that they're making in the right direction, it feeds that self confidence. While overthinkers have self doubt, which grows each day with new questions or with new uncertainty. And then when it comes to flexibility, high achievers adjust the course when needed without losing momentum. So a lot of entrepreneurs or successful or resilient entrepreneurs, when something doesn't work, boom, switch to the next thing. Boom, they switch to the next thing. It's also why many successful entrepreneurs have coaches, have mentors, have people in their corner who have done this thing before, so that they don't do what overthinkers do. They struggle to pivot. And they may revert to rethinking every detail. Listen, y'all. The linchpin between overthinking and overachieving, overdoing, is anxiety. It's thinking about things that you can't control. And so you either stay in your head until you think you figured it out and then you take action, or you just take so much action because you've been in your head and you're thinking, well, if I do the most, what I can't control can be controlled. And if I think it through enough, if I think the most, what I can't control will be controlled. But you can't control any of it. Right? There's this kind of rule of thumb, which is also one of those sayings that's really not inclusive. But the point is, there's a saying where people who are typically depressed is because they keep thinking about the past. And people who are anxious, they have anxiety, they keep thinking about the future. And the commonality between the past and the future is that there are things that you cannot control in either. However, in 2026, there's some things that you can control. Some of y'all probably think I'm crazy talking about 2026 already. That's okay. This might not be for you. I'm talking to the individuals who you probably have a goal that's so insurmountable, something that is huge. And unless you step into miracle territory, you're probably going to need more time. I think yesterday or the day before, I used the example of the Delta Sky Miles reward system and how it works. All of the flights and all of the trips that you take through Delta in 2025 is what will solidify your status for 2026. So I can, and here's the beauty of it. You can hit the mark early and enjoy some of those benefits early. So if you hit it in September, let's say you hit like platinum status in September because you've taken an insurmountable amount of trips, you just spent money. You can enjoy it in September or whenever the points and everything registers and all of that, and then you can enjoy it through 2026. That's possible. The challenge is many of us are trying to hit that platinum status this year. Nothing's wrong with that. This year, without embracing the reality or the possibility, rather, that it just might happen in 2026. In other words, don't burn yourself out. Don't feel as if you have to get it all done now. The reality is, you still might be able to enjoy some of the benefits sooner, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're, for example, no less of a good person or you're not as committed. That's not necessarily the case. There are going to be some things that's just going to take more time. So, the first thing that you need to have is a long term vision. Your long term vision is more than likely going to surpass 2025. It's more than likely going to surpass 2026, 2027. Listen, when we talk about strategy, many of you guys know this in business. When we talk about strategy, from a business standpoint, their plans, strategic planning, right? Talking about a 5-year mark, 10-year mark, 15-year mark. We're talking about years. Um, I have to go find it, but I actually had a kind of this living plan situation set up where I had like a 5, 10, and 15, and I need to go find it. I don't know why I haven't really kind of looked at it and updated it, but from maybe 10 years ago now. And it'll be interesting to see where I was versus where I am now. I do distinctly remember though that one of the other things that I was going to do was adding another graduate degree um, to my professional journey, and I did, but it was not what I thought it was going to be. I think it was supposed to be in like a creative writing or something like that. It ended up being an MBA in healthcare. Night and day, y'all. Night and day. But I did get another grad degree. So you're sitting on communication, sitting on the MBA. And not only that, but I finished the second grad degree shorter. Y'all don't want to know how long it took me to finish the first one. This one shorter and as what they would call a Welch scholar. So 4.0 GPA. GPAs mean nothing to me, but night and day. Because the last one, man, not that I barely passed. I mean, you know, you have to pass at a certain. I think it's like with a 3 or something with the masters in order to, order for it to be awarded to you. But the point is, I had less guidance. It was more autonomous. It was also half of it was during the pandemic. Well, the latter, the latter portion, not half. That's a little bit too much. I think I started just before, like maybe like a year before the pandemic hit. But the point is, um, less structure in a sense. I had to create the structure for myself. I was in a different space. Long term, long term, long term. So that happened. I remember also, now it's coming to me as I'm talking about this, also the idea of becoming a technical marketer. And let me see if I can find, they probably don't even have this anymore. But my goal in becoming a technical marketer at the time, this was years ago, was I needed to have like 12 skill sets. There was this particular image that had the 12 skills, and of course, it's probably not gonna show up now, but if I see it, I know that I would remember it. And I think this is what it is. I think this is exactly the one that I saw. Yep, on the Moz.com. Y'all, this is I'm telling you, when I told you that I saw this, let me just share the screen right quick. When I was thinking this through, y'all. Look, Moz.com. December 2012. This is around the time that I was thinking about this, y'all. This is not something that just happened just a few years ago. All right. Every marketer should be technical. And what are we looking at here? There's a particular image. By the way, this is such a long, take a look. This is a very, and of course, there are comments, but extensive article, but this is where it is that I'm looking at right here. Take a look, y'all. Let me zoom in for y'all. This right here. Take a look at that. Y'all see that? Understanding databases in SQL, web tech, web development, web design and UX, copywriting, analytics, forecasting and statistics, Excel, technical SEO, content platforms, email tech, and e-commerce tech to yield one kick-ass employee. Y'all see that right there? Okay. The interesting thing is, Remember, not having looked at that plan that I had to say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. There's some things that I just don't really care for. I took a hand in web development. Don't really care for it. I'd rather hire people for like certain projects that I get to do that work, right? Forecasting and statistics, not really. Technical SEO, I can understand some of it, but once again, the strengths, databases in SQL goes fits closely to software engineering and development here, right? Web design and UX, yep. Copywriting, that's where I started. My professional career started with copywriting. As a matter of fact, my senior portfolio in college actually had a mixture of graphic design and copywriting. And the dream, at least back then, was to land a copywriting position, because back then I was an avid writer. And not only that, but I also realized by looking at least back then, the the salary back then. I mean, they're starting at like 60, 70. I'm like, oh, back then, right? I was like, oh my goodness, this I want to be I can get this much just from writing, and a lot of freelance writing. The first freelance writing position if my memory serves me correctly, that I took was for a personal injury attorney. Well, it was with a company that had personal injury attorney clients. I knew nothing about that field. So a lot of copywriting means that you have to have research. You need to do research. And so it's not here on the list, but research is definitely a huge part. Actually, it connects with user experience design. I would actually separate this. Web design is one, UX design is another. But it's interesting that these are the things: UX, copywriting, did some web design, understanding content platforms, not as much now as before, but that's there. Email tech, playing with a lot of platforms back in the day, especially MailChimp. Now, of course, there are other email techs now, especially that are connected to newsletters. But the point here is that even with writing some of these things down, I didn't become a technical marketer that has all 12 ingredients. But you can argue that I became a very specialized marketer that was not having all of the 12, but maybe had a solid 3 or 4. And that's okay. Analytics. Like, I understand Google Analytics, but do I understand it to the depth that I would actually rather hire? I'd rather hire somebody or partner with somebody who understands, GA4, it's Google Analytics 4. Like, there's the 4th version that come out, and it changed the entire interface. Changed, and things that you can go deep into, find a particular feature is not in the same place as it was before. Y'all, listen, all I'm saying is this: I had a plan, and this plan, if I find it, I'll share it with you guys. But it was a 5, 10, and 15-year plan of where I saw myself. It had the finances, it had the professional vision, these long-term visions. And so that's why as I'm in 2025 right now, certain things I know, even as I have it written down in my planner, my quarterly planner, the annual plan, like, even though I have it written down, I am aware that all of it is not going to get fully achieved. And nothing is wrong with that. What's important, though, is that I see it. I'm looking at it, and I'm understanding that this is still something that's important. I may even be prioritizing that goal, but knowing that it's a long-term goal. So one of the things that y'all have to have is you have to have a long-term vision, because successful individuals and also successful organizations, we set these goals several years ahead. So thinking ahead to, for instance, 2026, which is not really that long, y'all. 2026 is not several years ahead, but let's say from a personal standpoint, for some of the things that you're looking for, it could be considered technically long-term-ish. What it does is planning there, it ensures that you're aligning your current efforts with your future vision, rather than just reacting to the short-term changes that are going to be happening. Listen, we're about midway in January. um, the anxiety in me wants to say January is almost done. Yeah. But when you're able to manage that anxiety, um, it can be a motivating factor. The other thing too is when you're thinking about just where to put your efforts, or if it's more business related, where to put your resources. Listen, um, you have to, if you haven't already, develop some sort of roadmap for yourself so that you can create some action steps. So have some specific tasks that are needed for each milestone, or maybe specific projects that are needed for each milestone. That's going to be very, 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 very important. Like I'm in a place right now in my life where I understand the skill sets that I have. And a big one happens when, and it's so funny. People have to tell me oftentimes, not that I'm not aware, but it's more evident to them than it is to me because they're in the room or in the space when it happens. But it's when things go extemporaneous, when there are no notes, when there is no plan in a sense for how it's. You can call me. It's so funny. My dad, when um, he was an iron worker, and so they would call him the finisher at work. So like after all of the work is done, of course he's been on that side too, right? But when you go up in rank and you become a supervisor, etc., you now are the person. You just have an eye. Apparently, I have that eye too, which is a big reason why I'm in design. You have an eye to look for things that just need to be refined, tweaked, fixed, because those little things can add up, which can, if you're not careful, have a building crumble. We actually had a whole bridge crumble here. I think it was like an FIU bridge years ago. It just randomly just collapsed, and it wasn't even up for I think, if my memory serves me correctly, for more than a year, something like that. And you know, they're trying to figure out like the engineering behind, like how did this happen? Well, you know, you need a finisher. Um, so sometimes I tend to be that finisher. Well, I'll come at the end of presentations, um, and have the ability to tie things up. And this ability to tie things up, individuals and their thoughts, and then bringing it all together and creating on the spot, y'all, this new idea, or just making things super clear, having people go away with like, wow, it makes even more sense now. It was great before, but now, oh wow. Um, there's somebody who's really good at it though. Uh, yeah, if y'all know me, y'all know who I would say is really good at it. And if you know, just put it in the chat. So one guy that I know that can probably outdo me in that. Not even probably, he would outdo me in that. But yeah, he's my dad. He's called a finisher, and that's a trait that I've taken on, not in construction, but in decision making, in facilitations like workshops, like being able to look at the gaps, fill in the gaps for other people, for them to say, "Oh wow, okay, now it's complete." Um, doesn't mean that people's workshops or keynotes or whatever weren't finished. They were. I just put my little sprinkle on top of it. And the beauty of it, and I'm looking forward, if I'm transparent, long term, I'm looking forward to being in rooms where I'm able to exercise that same skill set, making those high impact decisions. Sitting next to individuals might end up being the quietest in the room in the beginning, but processing and taking it all in to be able to, towards maybe the middle, maybe towards the end, whatever it is, whatever the agenda item calls for, um, to add just enough insight, not to overdo it, but just enough insight for us to take the next wise step in the right direction. It's one of my talents, I would say. And the reason why I call it a talent versus a skill is because that's something that I did not have to train to do. It's there. I'm able to see dots. I'm able to connect the dots. You can call me a dot connector. If you want to get scientific, I probably have what they call what's it called, apophenia, the ability to see patterns where many don't see patterns, and that can be a gift and a curse. right? Sometimes you'll see things that ain't there, and it's because it's not there. So pattern makers can also be a little delusional. So the point though is at some juncture, um, when you are creating this roadmap and you're looking at these milestones, what are the action steps? What are you doing? What are the projects that you're doing that you can kind of put in place so that when you finish Q1 of 2025, you're like, okay, I'm getting closer. When you finish Q2, Q3, by the time you get to December of 2025, there shouldn't be disappointment. There should be, you know what? I completed the specific or hit the specific benchmarks that I'd laid out so that when 2026 comes, I'll be in a very good place. So I told you, some of us are very excited about 2025 because of what we did before, what we did in 24, what we did in 23, what we did in 22. The chickens are coming. Is it the chickens are coming to roost? Let me look that up. I feel like I messed up that phrase. Or is it the hens? Yes, it is. The chickens coming home. That's the coming home to roost. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the difference is it's actually a negative connotation because it means that people's bad deeds will come back to haunt them. So we ain't talking about no haunting here. It's actually more of good favor happening. Good ROI, the return on good investment, not the bad investment. All right. So maybe we won't talk about chicken roosting. Okay. Yeah. Because it talks about like past mistakes or wrongdoings come back to cause this problem. Nah, we ain't on that. Yeah, so for some of us, 2024, 3 and 2 and 1, now all that happened then. Now we, looking for the good stuff now. So anyway, y'all, I hope that this is helpful. I hope that this is going to get you in a place where you can take some of the goals. Once again, you don't have to erase, you don't have to scratch out, you don't have to undo. You just need to think about some of the goals that you set up this year may not be for this year. It may be for 2026. And that's okay. Unless you might be in a dire strait, right? Like dire need for something to happen immediately because of whatever the circumstance is. So it's got to happen this year. Okay, that's a little different. Those need to be prioritized, and you got to make different moves in order for those things to happen. But those are short term, right? I can give you an example. So, for instance, if you had, I don't know, a certain debt that had to be paid at a certain time before, let's say that debt gets charged off, and you don't want that to happen because your credit score is going to be jacked up, whatever the case is. And so, let's say you've got, I don't know, 2 months left or some craziness. The short term is coming up with the funds, right, in order to make that happen. But the long term is never having to worry about that again. The long term is looking to pay off all of that. The long term is being in a space where you can have sustainable, perhaps passive income. That's long term. If you keep living in the short term, but you don't have either the long term in mind or you don't have long term at all, what ends up happening is you just keep living a short term life. And that sounds very contradictory, like living a short term life. You could have a long life, but you'd be living it short term, living it for the short term. So there's this paradigm where poor people live to pay bills. The middle class live to pay off debt, but the wealthy wisely uses debt to create wealth. It's not that the wealthy never get into debt, y'all. They actually go into debt and they leverage that debt, which creates more cash flow for them. And they pay off that debt. They have that profit and they take that and they just do it all over again. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it. However, you would see and you can understand how there is a different view and a different mindset of what debt looks like to somebody who is wealthy versus somebody who is just living their life to pay off student loans, right? Um, which seems to be almost everybody that lives or that went to school. Almost. Let's say the majority. I feel like it's the majority. It may not be the majority, but I know there's a lot of folk in the US of A that are still paying off their student loan debt. Don't ask me if I'm still paying mine off. The answer is yes. So that's it, y'all. Expect. Some of you start expecting certain things for 2026. Keep your head straight. All right. Keep your head in the present, focus on 2025, but knowing and have expectations for certain things coming to fruition in 26. All right. Okay, y'all. Have a good night. I'll chat with y'all later.